Welcome back. You know, this is really one of my favorite subjects in yogic meditation, in any meditation, is learning to become more subtle, learning to notice the little things. It's so incredibly powerful, and it's really quite magical when you learn to notice the little things. So let's get into it. Now, this is one of my favorite quotes. It was the Apostle Paul, and he said, "God comes like a thief in the night." Isn't that amazing? Now, it's not always like that. Sometimes something happens. Maybe you have a near-death experience. You have an out-of-body experience. Maybe, you have a really big bliss in deep meditation. I was telling everybody, you got to notice all the little things. And somebody wrote to me and they go, "Forrest, but this one happened and it was huge. It blew my mind." Yes, that will happen as well. But it all works better when you begin to notice the little things inside of yourself. And the way I explained this to myself years and years ago is, I'm like, oh my God, you're looking, Forrest, you're looking for this huge slap across the face that truth and the divine and the soul and bliss and deep meditation, it's going to come and it is just going to arise and slap you across the face. And that's not the way it came at all. In fact, it came exactly like a thief in the night. And so you'll find some meditative traditions that are just like, okay, just focus on this one little thing. Like, for example, just focus on the spiritual eye. That's all you do. You just focus on the spiritual eye. That will answer everything. Actually, I don't recommend that. Probably better to put your mind on the medulla. But you might have noticed, I don't recommend that you focus on only one thing. In fact, I've purposely put out a humongous buffet for you. And the first part of that buffet is the 4 proofs, right? You notice that the hands are hot and heavy because you're sitting very still as you enter into HRV resonance, right? So you're doing the long breathing, you're sitting very still, the hands get hot and heavy, maybe your lip tingles, maybe you feel that pressure along the dorsal vagal, maybe your skin tingles, and suddenly you know, oh my God, it's working. And that will blow your mind. But those 4 proofs, they're very subtle. They're not overt. You have to be here and actually notice a little bit. Not a lot, just enough that you can notice one of those 4 proofs. And then you might notice that there's calmness, or there's tranquility, or there's peace. And then out of that peace comes sometimes compassion and joy, and eventually even equanimity, and along the way bliss. Just amazing. But it all started by being here and making the breath long, quieting the body. The mind begins to quiet because of that. And now we're actually here. We can actually begin to notice the subtle things. And that's how you're going to notice that the divine, the higher self, comes to you like a thief in the night. Being patient with yourself, being kind with yourself, being forgiving of the story of your life that you have lived, being forgiving of that. That will allow you to be here. The Om Japa in the chakras, it cleans us out and allows us to be here and notice what is going on. Notice the small things. Notice the small ways that the ego tries to trick you. I put up a quote once about false humility, and one of my dear friends commented, they said, "I don't understand this." And I thought, oh wow, isn't that interesting? Because I lived with it in the ashram so many years, all this false humility. I remember Judy Jolly came into the ashram and she goes, "You're all leaking." And the monks were, "What? What do you mean we're leaking?" She's like, "You're trying to control yourself outwardly, but inside you're still boiling with all of these things, and it's just leaking everywhere. So every time I see you, I see all of this leaking. And so even now, the feedback that I'm giving you, there's this anger and frustration which is leaking out of you. And maybe you'll label it as something slightly different, but the leaking is there. We can see it inside of you. And so all of these monastics who were senior monastics had to sit there and take this feedback from a psychologist. Look, the process that you're doing, something is missing because you are clamping down outwardly on the display of things which are not right inside of you, but you are not cleaning them out to the point that you are free of them. And so you are leaking. That time was so amazing because I got to see Mitrananda transform from somebody who was doing what he thought he was supposed to be doing to becoming vastly more authentic, vastly more real, vastly more honest with himself and honest with the young monks that he was counseling. The truth will set you free, right? But as one of my friends said, the truth will set you free, but it will probably frustrate you to no end to begin with. All of that is the cleaning out. And all of that subtle process is made possible because we are entering into the low idol state. The cleaning out begins the process of noticing ourselves so that we can actually face ourselves. And hopefully the repetition of the Om Japa, the Kriya therapy, day after day after day, it lightens that load and it makes it so much easier to get the learning. And all of that clears the way so that the higher self can finally shine through. And so I've said this before, I've said this quote before, pay attention to the subtle things because God comes like a thief in the night, right? And I got this beautiful reply. Ken says, he lived in the Middle East in the days when thieves entered from the large hole in the roof for the fire. In other words, from above. And there you have it. The very process of how it's going to come is right there in that little tiny quote. God comes like a thief in the night, in other words, through the hole in the roof. That crown is where the higher self is going to descend. And when the water down below, the water of the subconscious is still enough, calm enough, and clear enough, because we're doing the Om Japa, right? Then we get the message in that water. The moon of the higher self comes down like a thief in the night and is reflected in the calm waters of the subconscious. And that's how we get that learning. That's how we get those downloads. And eventually, we live more and more with that upper nervous system, with that loving kindness, with that compassion, with that joy, that equanimity, that knowing, that expansion. It's all right there, hidden inside of us, waiting for us. And we just need to get calm enough and clear enough that this process, this very, very natural process, works automatically. So I hope that you love this. If you did, be sure to hit that bell down below so I can see all of you next time.